Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. After a while now, I have with me Lieutenant General Narasimhan, who's going to tell us what's happening behind the red curtain in China. Xi Jinping seems to be admitting certain things with which he's never done with regards to his follies, if I may, in China, and of course the purges in the military continue. Let's try and make some sense with General Sir and try and find out what's actually happening there. Sir, firstly, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope the next gap is not this long. So, namaskar and welcome to the show.
Namaskar. Thank you, and thanks for getting me onto this show again. And the long gap is also because of my being away out of the country to visit my family for almost about 3 months. Then I just came back. It's always nice to be on this show, which makes a lot of sense. And
Thank
to
you, sir.
start the presentation today, it is the new appointments within PLA is something that we need to be looking at. You looked at the PLA rocket force, which had gone through a lot of purge, and recently the information came that 9 general level officers have been removed from the people's NPPs, NC, NPs, NPPCC, which is the like a parliament in China. So that is nothing new, basically, because once they lose their ranks in the PLA, obviously they'll also lose the other recognitions within the party. So that was to follow anyway. The generals had been removed from their own positions earlier. So that is something we need to keep in mind. And the most important two of the purges that took place was the sacking of the defense minister, Li Shangfu, and also the sacking of the foreign minister, Qin Gang. Both of them went out of circulation in the last about 6 months, and Li Shangfu about for the last two months plus. Why these people have been purged is something that I think none of us will get to know in any decent amount of time. But the fact, and only speculations have been going around. First, about Qin Gang's removal, there have been a lot of speculation. One is he had an affair with a reporter and probably had a child through surrogacy. And both of them are actually having an affair plus having surrogacy, having a child through surrogacy. Both are illegal in China. So that is one of the reasons that was given. Second reason that was given was that he was getting too close to the US. And there were also reports, even Nikkei Asia and others wrote, that the Russian minister Rudenko came to China and then probably revealed that Qin Gang has been compromised. Not only Qin Gang, number of others within the foreign ministry have been compromised by the US. A lot of rumors are floating around. That is one thing about the US, one thing about his personal conduct. The third thing could be that probably somewhere down the line, his loyalty was questionable. His loyalty became questionable. So therefore, the purge that took place of Qin Gang. I mean, you will never come to know the real reason, but these are guesswork that you can do. That is on Qin Gang. On Li Shangfu, the period between 2017 and 2022 was being investigated in the equipment department, which Li Shangfu was heading at that particular time, and his removal seems to be because of corruption. That is what one could make out. That is something that one could make. Again, the reason for his purge you will never come to know. He has been replaced by General Tung Chuen, who is actually a ex-naval officer, naval chief, and then now he has been reinstated as the defense minister. His induction into the position of defense minister gives me three things. One, his experience of handling Navy will come in handy for China's global ambitions. Most of the writers have said that he will have, because of his experience in the South China Sea, South China Sea will come into focus. My own understanding is South China Sea is very much the influence of China has increased considerably there. I think now they will start looking beyond South China Sea, and their ambitions will go global. So he will be the one who will be instrumental, because defense minister in China again does not have any operational control or anything.
Hmm.
He is basically a front for the PLA, and he does diplomacy, foreign relations, defense cooperation, etc. So if China has to go global and they need to have bases elsewhere, he'll be the one who will be spearheading that kind of an effort. So to me, first effect of this General Tung Chun becoming the defense minister is that China will now look at ambitions that are global. That is one, and not only restrict themselves to South China Sea. The second thing, when the PLA rocket force got purged, and then you found the chief and everybody getting docked, you find an officer from the Navy taking over PLA rocket force, and an officer from Air Force becoming the political commissar of PLA rocket force.
Yeah.
These are all firsts. This is the first time a naval officer has become a defense minister. This is the first time also a naval officer has become the commander of the PLA rocket force. Sorry. Immediately after that, there were reports saying that the PLA rocket force efficacy might go down, etc., etc. I, for one, don't believe that. The reason for that is simple. Even in our strategic forces command, you will find the strategic forces command commander is actually rotational between Army, Navy, and Air Force. If it can happen here, why not there? So the operational efficiency of the rocket force is unlikely to be affected because of that change. Now, when the rocket force changed and it became Navy again, so that is the second thing, that the effectiveness of rocket force need not be questioned. I think it will continue to be the same, or it will continue to improve the way it has been improving earlier. So that is the second thing that has come up. The third thing that comes up is, by putting officers from other services as head of the PLA rocket force and as defense minister, etc., I think there has been an increased effort in the jointness. One of the reasons why military reforms were introduced in 2016 is basically to improve the jointness within the armed forces of China. So this will probably help in increasing the jointness, because the jointness is still a weak area
Weak
of,
link. Yeah.
of PL. So that is the second thing that came up. And the third thing, if you look at it, the PLA Air Force seems to be the poorer cousin amongst all the other services. All the theater commanders are all from the Army. You find a defense
Yes.
minister and the rocket force going to the Navy. So obviously, Air Force doesn't seem to be on the horizon anywhere. That is not to say that PLA Air Force has been performing below par. No, I wouldn't say that. You look at the number of aircraft that is crossing the median line towards Taiwan every day, you will come to know that the PLA Air Force is also coming of age. They also brought out a movie called Born to Fly. I don't know whether you saw it, Adi. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
may like to see it. That Born to Fly is something which showcases the PLA Air Force and the testing, the test pilots who actually fly the stealth aircraft, which is produced in China. So this is something which they have done to propagate the PLA Air Force. So three things. One is the 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 outlook of China is going to go global
Global.
than South China Sea. Two, the efficacy of the rocket force will remain as it was, or it may improve as it was been improving. Three, there is an increase in jointness, which you can likely to see in the future. And the fourth is the PLA Air Force seems to be not in the upper hierarchy too much. So that is something which I would analyze regarding the new appointments within the PLA. The other question that you had is on the official purges that has been reported in Apple.com, that 53 high-level officials have been purged in 1 year. When this purging started, somewhere around 2014-15, there were about 35 odd people who got purged.
Yeah.
I mean, slowly and steadily it kept increasing. This implies two things. One, the tigers are the ones who are getting caught more, because they initially what used to happen is, um, the same thing which reported that the retired people are sacrosanct, they're not touched, etc. But my own understanding was it is the retired people who always got actually into trouble. When they are in service, they were never trouble. And the second thing I noticed when I was in China, and I have been following China over a period of 2 decades now, is that when they target the people at the hierarchy, the top man is never targeted. It is the number
Hmm.
two who always used to get into the dock. So those things have changed. Retired people are getting targeted. Very senior level people are getting targeted. Otherwise, the first purges that took place in the PLA, the Sweet Saihau and Kuoposium. These are the two people who were the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and after they
Yeah.
retired, they were actually put into the dock. So you find that nobody is getting spared in China. So this is something which we need to keep in mind. Like for example, tigers and the flies is what they call it. Tigers are the people who are high up
Big
in
boys.
the ranking, and the flies are the ones who are the smaller
The
flies along the
mass.
place. So yeah, so the both of them are getting affected. So there is one fallout of such a very serious kind of targeting of people. That is actually to say that um, you know you find that there is a feeling, at least I get to see this in some writings, is that the bureaucrats and others are now getting a little shy of taking decisions because they don't know which decision will go against them at what point in time. So there is a bit of a timidity that comes into the decision making process, is something that people have been reporting. So this is something that we may like to keep in mind when this thing happens. The third aspect that you wanted me to speak is on the Xi Jinping's New Year speech.
Hmm.
Starting from 2018 onwards, Xi Jinping not only used to give a speech but also used to give a mobilization order on the 1st of January 2018, 19, 20. He did those. After a while, of course, those orders have waned away. When those orders were given, in addition, I'll come to the speech part of it, but let me give you the background to the other thing that used to happen on the 1st of January. When after giving the speech on the 31st evening, on the first he used to issue out a mobilization order, and the entire PLA mobilized to do exercises for 10 to 12 days. When I say entire PLA,
Wow.
it included everybody. Okay, so they used to get to strategic. They got four strategic training areas across China, and they used to get into one of those training areas, and then carry out training for 10 to 12 days. And that used to be peak winter. You can see it in Beijing and other places. Even notwithstanding that, they used to be doing that exercise for 10 to 12 days and then going back. Last 2 3 years, we haven't seen these orders coming up, but the PLA does the exercises on the New Year's Day. Even this New Year's Day, they did the mobilization part and then they were doing the exercise part. So this is the one aspect of that. The second aspect is this Xi Jinping speech itself, which came out on the first. To me, though he talked about headwinds, etc., to me, three or four things stand out very clearly. One, if you look at the word
Hmm.
innovation was emphasized enough. So innovation has got another connotation, and that connotation is related to the economic growth. So when I talked to people in Washington D.C. when I was there and met most of the think tanks, the feeling one got was that they were not very worried about the GDP going down. Chinese are not worried about the GDP slowing down a bit. But what they are worried about, they feel that the future of China is in their innovation capability. So they want to invest in innovation and technological development more, even though the GDP may be slowing down a bit in the next few years. So you find the emphasis on innovation even in Mr. Xi Jinping's speech. Not only in this speech, he started talking about innovation in 2014 onwards. 2014, 17, 18, 20. If you see, number of times and number of places he talks about innovation and self-sufficiency in technology. So that is something which stands out even in this talk. He talks about other things, like for example, looking after elderly people, etc., etc. So that is again comes up. The third point which I noticed in this talk is he is talking about a quality development. Development for the sake of development is not something that they are looking at. What they are looking at is the quality of the development is something that is coming up. Of late, it has been coming up over a period of time. So you find that these are the main things that come up. He talks about the headwinds, etc. His mentioning of Taiwan came up into questioning in or came up into highlights in many places, but he just made a mention of unification is inevitable is something he made a mention.
Yeah,
He just made it
the
on one
standard
place.
dialogue.
That's all. Which is actually the thing that he has been saying earlier. Also, there's nothing new that he has been saying in that. So if you look at the entire speech, to me it appears to be a little a docile kind of a speech.
Mellow.
I would
Yeah, I
say
was about to
not
say mellow.
nothing, nothing out of the normal. I would say,
Mhm.
and he talked about headwinds coming up, etc., etc., which in any case every country faces headwinds these days with all the things happening around the place. So, to my way of thinking, there was nothing very abnormal about that speech. He talked about quality of innovation. He talked about innovation, quality of development, looking after elderly, etc., etc. He talked about education. Education is something he talked about in that speech, which actually, when he went and banned the tuition classes and the online education, etc., etc., he had gone and banned them. But he is talking about a quality education being given to people, and that quality education will again feed into the innovation part. So these are linked. So that linkage is something that we need to be looking at. But otherwise, I don't find anything very abnormal in that speech or any offensive, very much offensive in that speech. Is what I generally got that feeling. And
So
generally, what happens is when we do this analysis, we do it episodically because we look at this speech and then do the analysis. But I think if you keep looking at the past speeches of 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, I wouldn't say that there was much of a departure in this entire thing. That is my reading.
interesting. So, because headwinds is something that he's been mentioning since, I guess, 2018 onwards.
Which
Uh,
one?
the headwind part he's been mentioning
Yeah,
since
he's been
2018.
mentioning. He mentioned even in the other talks that he had earlier in 2023. Also, he had these not only during the New Year talk, even in other places
Yeah,
like the party conference, etc. He has been talking about headwinds. So that is nothing
correct.
new actually. Again, to
What
see.
what I found was interesting in this speech was there were two factors. One, he didn't mention color revolutions, which has been a
Hmm.
part of his speeches in the past at least 1 2 years. And the
Correct.
second point that I found interesting is that he did not mention common prosperity
He
anywhere,
didn't
and
mention
that is
common prosperity, but he talked about there's one word he used for development, which actually means that. I'll come
yeah.
back to
But
it. Like he just he
he
didn't
didn't
say the
say
word.
the yeah, because
Yeah,
that's
he
something
didn't
which
say the
he's
word
gonna.
common prosperity.
Hmm.
That is very
I
true.
mean,
Yes.
as a person who came up with this whole byline of common prosperity and literally took down corporates to the point that Alibaba is today. I mean, Jack Ma from Alibaba, former Alibaba,
Jack Ma is now out of control of the company anyway.
yeah, he's selling packaged food.
Correct.
So there is it's a very interesting thing that he's not mentioned this, and that to me was a little this thing, and the color revolution part, which was very interesting to me because he mentioned the first time color revolution in the BRICS meeting, in the SEO meeting in Kazakhstan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's the first time he mentioned color revolutions, and after that, twice again he mentioned it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Either he's now confident because of the purges or what, I don't know, sir. But my question to you about your first observation with regards to the naval officer being in charge would be, so what happens in Philippines, because he's facing quite a lot of challenges there as well. Philippines has employed a very interesting tactic of taking journalists in their naval ships and exposing China, and he's quite frustrated about it. As a matter of fact, you can see the responses. I was just doing a Global Times analysis of what he said. And I'll just take 30 seconds. So on the 21st of October, he said Philippines is reckless. On the 22nd of October, he said we can squeeze Philippines. On the 23rd of October, he said Philippines is a danger to our sovereignty. On the 27th of October, he again said we will crush them. On the 28th of October, he said America is instigating Philippines and this may become a regional conflict. And on the 1st of November, he said Marcos needs to be careful because China is getting angry. So it went from a, you know, all over the place.
True, but off late I see another trend. Even Philippines actually, that ship. Second World War old ship that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
got docked into that second Thomas Shoal, that they are trying to revive with the help of the US. So that is something that is going to put a little problem there with the Chinese, get them onto the thing. But Philippines is actually divided as far as their approach to China is concerned. One faction in Philippines says that we should take China head on. The other faction says that we need to tread cautiously. The previous president of China, Philippines, Mr. Duterte, he was
Duterte.
actually going. He was actually softer towards China.
Sure.
When Mr. Marcos came into power, then he actually switched again. This keeps going up and down because the person who was before Duterte actually went to the UNCLOS, the Permanent Court of Arbitration for on the claims of the seven reefs. Whereas Duterte changed tune, and Mr. Marcos has changed tune again back into the other one. So depending on the who is in power in Philippines, this attitude also keeps varying. And today within Philippines, you have two different views actually emerging. If you follow Philippines media, you get these two different views coming up. Notwithstanding that, I think Philippines has taken a stance now that they need to take on China in some form. They may not
Um,
actually go into a full-fledged kind of a thing, but what they have done is to give four more places for bases for the US that they have done, and then they're trying to take the US technology and US support to revive that ship which is already docked there, which has been grounded there actually, and to some extent they have been actually showing their muscle with their navy, etc., trying to protect what is happening in that area of their own. But Philippines navy is no match to Chinese navy. Let's also be very clear about it. So the Chinese, when they were even recently, they were actually doing the water cannons on those ships, etc., which was reported earlier. So you find that this tussle is going to go on. It is not going to stop, and China will keep pushing because they want the first island chain to be with them very, very clearly. Philippines doesn't want to let go of their territory, and so that is going to be there. The third thing is, that this all actually brings a problem to China. That is actually they signed a declaration of conduct on the South China Sea in 2002, and they were to sign another code of conduct in the South China for behavior in South China Sea in 2018. The draft was circulated. They said by 2021 they'll finish the code of conduct agreement with the ASEAN countries. I mean, the countries which had the claims on this territory, but that doesn't seem to be anywhere in sight.
close.
So this is something. This is something that is going to haunt the Chinese. It's going to haunt the others because the single draft negotiating test that they circulated had gone through a couple of readings, but the problem is that each country has put in its own worries into it. So you find that common ground is going to be difficult to achieve. So South China Sea is going to become a bone of contention between not only Philippines and
China.
China, but even with other countries, they got claims there.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding that, I am sure people will have noticed Mr. Xi Jinping visit to Vietnam recently. That is again a thing that was basically to smoothen the ruffled feathers as far as this is concerned. So again, there are a lot of things that are happening in South China Sea and the countries around it, but it is still in a state of flux. We don't know where it is
Yeah.
going to go. But one thing is sure, that China's influence in South China Sea is increasing, and it is a cause of concern for many countries in that region. As far as we are concerned, we are worried about the freedom of navigation and the freedom of overflight. That is the basic requirement for move of commerce into that sea from to the South China Sea. We are actually concerned about that. That is what I feel that South China Sea thing is going to be for some more time to come. And I
Sure.
have not talked about the East China Sea because East China Sea is a different ball game again between Japan and China. So that is another thing that is going on there. But East and South China Seas are going to be very interesting to watch in the near future to come.
Actually, for my next subject with you, sir, I wanted to talk to you about the nuclear angle of the East China Sea, which is building up,
Mhm.
and we could probably, at your convenience, do another video on that, sir, because that's a very interesting development in that region. There are a lot of
Okay.
voices now coming out and saying that we can't trust the US, we need to do this on our own. Uh, sir, you know, your the second part of your answer, you spoke about the PLA, which gives me a little bit of a question. One is that with so many frequent changes of the defense minister and the purges and this and that, how does it impact the operational readiness of the PLA? And apart from that, the motivation not of the forces but the higher command. Would they be more averse to taking risk or more pro taking risk, or how do you look at a situation with these kind of purges happening, sir?
Right. Let me put it this way. As I mentioned earlier during this interaction, I had mentioned that the defense minister in China does not have any operational control or operational role over the armed forces. So therefore, it doesn't matter who comes as defense minister. That the operational preparedness and the operational capability of the PLA itself, I don't think will be affected because the defense minister is getting changed or purged. Similarly, on the rocket force, I mentioned to you, only the top people have been changed. The other, like the bases, they got the six bases, and below them they got brigades, etc. None of those structures have been affected badly. So, to that extent, I would say that I would not question the efficiency, operational efficiency of the PLA. We should be as careful as we are with any other adversary, and I would give the same kind of outlook towards the PLA's operational capability and not underestimate their capability because of these purges and changes that are taking place at the top. That is the number one. And to a major extent, what happens in the top actually does not actually affect the operational capability at the very low levels, like for example,
Hmm.
battalion, brigades, and things like that, because they have their own role cut out, and they have their own exercises that are going on without any kind of stoppage. So I feel that we should not underestimate the PLA's operational capability, and we should be constantly on the watch as far as that is concerned. That is number one. Number two, on the motivation of higher commands, this has been there for some time. In many of the Western analysts, mainly they write about this. They say that because of the purges that are taking place, and the CCDI person being on the Central Military Commission, the Commission for Discipline and Inspection, is actually a member of the Central Military Commission. So they feel that this is likely to affect the decision making capability of the commanders over a period of time. So, to my way of thinking, that effectiveness of capability to take decisions has been located as one of their. They used to call something known as five incapables of their PLA personnel. So two gaps and five incapables is what they used to talk about. One of them is the decision making capability. The second point that they used to talk about is the PLA commander's inability to read the situation fully and then take decisions. So like that, there are five incapables of commanders with themselves have listed out, and that has been there with or without these purges. And in fact, they predate these purges, actually speaking. The senior level purges that we are seeing now. So I don't think all these things are not going to affect the fighting capability of the PLA is what I personally feel. That is number one. Number two, as far as the morale is concerned, on the ground, I don't see that there's been a lack of morale. These purges have been taking place, everything has been happening, but when you interact with people on ground, I don't see that kind of lack of morale coming up anywhere. So they are as charged up as they are when you deal with them in the borders. So I don't think even there you have a problem as far as lower levels are concerned. At higher level command making and decision making, there may be certain amount of caution that I don't deny, because they would weigh the pros and cons of their decisions, whether they will come back to haunt them later. So that is something I am sure they will be worried about. But operationally, I haven't seen it happening on the ground. So that is what I feel about that question of yours.
And the last question, sir, one thing that he mentioned, which is being mentioned quite often in China today, it's pretty open, is that uh, the economy is, I mean, now in a very bad condition. There is a For the first time in China's history, the FDI has actually gone in minus. Uh, Now here is a market which is a lot of people, and let me just put this: a lot of analysts are terming the recent rise in terms of the Chinese economy to the factor that a lot of countries are picking up extra quantities of what they might need in the next some time, considering there might be a problem in the supply chain or something. This is one of the logics that has been given by some people. Some people say that it is a pent up demand which is there within China and outside China, which is kind of building up and which will equalize and not sustain for the long, not even the short term. So, how do you see the impact of the economy towards Xi Jinping's future plans, sir? Because uh, he is in trouble. There's just no question about it. Previously, it was, yeah, they're doing badly and this and that. Today, it's trouble with Moody slashing down, and so it's quite a
Okay,
tough thing.
that's a good question. Let me answer it in 3 or 4 points. Okay,
So
it was a realization not now. If I remember correctly, around 2000, um, 2011, 12 onwards, there has been a feeling that China will not be able to maintain the kind of growth that it had seen in the previous 3 decades. So they say that the previous 3 decades they have been growing in double digits, and that is unsustainable, and that is not going to continue. There were actually assessments that Chinese growth will come down to anything around 3 to 4% by 2030. That is not last year. It was actually done 5 6 years back. If you read the analysis of economists on how China's economy is going to go, they were in any case on a reducing path, coming down to about 3 to 4% around 2030. So this year they have grown around 5%. Their growth was they expected to grow by 5%, and all the assessments so far, which have been given by many of the assessment the rating agencies and companies, indicate that they'll be able to meet that 5%. If not 5%, 4.9, 4.7, depending on whom you read, you get to see this. In the last 2 months, all of them have upgraded their assessment by 0.2% of the GDP. So this is something that has happened over a period of time. That is number one. Number two, uh, for the first time, I don't know whether you saw the report yesterday and today. For the first time, the purchasing managers index has gone up by over 50. Last month it was 49.1. The Sison index is what I'm talking about, 49.1, and this time they have said it is 50.8. Anything above 50 indicates growth. So you find certain amount of variations in the assessments, and then the changes that are taking place in the thing. Third thing they all used to quote is the real estate. The real estate went down badly last year and I mean from 21 onwards, and so therefore it consists of 30% of the GDP. Therefore, it is going to affect the GDP growth of China. But if you look at the kind of measures that they have taken up, say, ever since this Evergrande thing took place in China, the Evergrande folded, and when that took place, the kind of action that China has taken over a period of time to renegotiate the dues that are owned by these real estate owners. They also told the provinces to help out these real estate developers. They have actually, in the last few couple of months, they have actually funded the banks by another $50 billion to actually to pump into one of these industries. So you find they are taking a number of actions not to let the real estate sector fold, so that the economy is getting affected badly. So this is the real estate sector part of it. Then there is a part of the technology denial regime which has come up. The West is trying to deny technology, but China seems to be having its own run, and they have gone up to 5 nanometers on their own, and they have said they produce mobile phones with 5 nanometer chips, and then probably they're trying to go further. So there are technological leaks that are taking place that will not hold Chinese back as far as technological development is concerned. The other thing that we need to look at is the developments that have taken place as far as the other sectors are concerned. Like, for example, manufacturing is one, domestic consumption is one. These are issues, and travel, the tourism in China is again picking up over a period of time. My own understanding is, though they this year they have grown by 5%. In the March, in the NPC, will come to know what percentage they want to grow in the coming year. In the work conference, on the economic work conference that took place in December, they didn't give any percentage. They'll have to wait for the March one to see if they give any percentages for growth.
Yeah.
If that is the growth and they can maintain it, then I don't find that Chinese economy in deep trouble is something which I don't get to see. In my earlier part of the remarks, I had mentioned that they are looking at systemic correction. Like, for example, their fiscal sector needed a lot of stability and correction. Couple of them. If you read Michael Pettis, who keeps writing on a lot of things, he's an economist who writes on China's economy over a period of time. If you look at it, he's not so pessimistic as others are. So my own reading is that you need to take a holistic assessment of economy of China and not go by episodic incidents of, say, real estate failing or something else failing. I think we need to stop that. Yesterday only there was a report that BOID, China's BOID, has actually sold more cars, more e-vehicles than Tesla.
Tesla.
So these things are also happening simultaneously. So we need to look at a holistic view of how China's economy is performing, and then come to a conclusion. My own reading is, even next year, the growth will be somewhere between 4 to 5%. So that is the rate at which all these developed economies grow. Even if you look at any of the Western economies which are developed economies, none of them grow at very high rates. So why are we picking out only China to say that they're not growing? And even if, the other answer is, even if they're growing at, say, 5%, they're going on $17 trillion economy, which means that every year they're growing by $850 billion, which is 25% of your GDP. So that is something that we need to again keep in mind. So instead of saying a doomsday theory, I think we need to do a deeper research of China's economy to know exactly where it is. My own understanding is they will continue to grow around this rate, anywhere between 3 to 5% for the next 20, 30 years. And that is the way that they will be able to grow. Beyond that will be something which is actually exceptional.
That's interesting. I think that is required. So we could actually look at doing a little more in-depth analysis of what the Chinese have at the moment. Sir,
It is
this has
not
been
that I
insight.
this is not that I'm trying to appreciate what China is doing. It is not that.
No, no,
I
no.
am
I think
I'm trying to take a realistic outlook on China's economy. That's what I'm trying to do.
yeah. I think there is obviously a factor that the Chinese will try and revive themselves. There's no question about it. Uh, they're not just going to roll
Whether
over
they
and die.
succeed or not
That's
is a different question.
different question. Absolutely, absolutely. Sir, thank you so much. This was very insightful, actually, especially the part of Xi Jinping's speech, which is, I guess, everything that comes out of China has been taken with a huge pinch of salt. Um, Sometimes they do speak the truth, so there's that as well. They're even their writers and even their news media does speak the truth sometimes. On that
Very
note, sir,
some
thank you so
very few
much.
times.
Very few times, sir. On that note, thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time, and I hope to catch up with you very soon about the nuclear question of the East China Sea. Till then, sir,
We'll do that. We'll do
thank you
that.
and
Thank
Jai
you.
Hind.
Jai.